Points for you. Okay, so again, the purpose of the panel is to create a safe space for Black women to feel whatever it is we're feeling during this time, without having to explain it in any intricate manner. So we're doing these meetings as a way to sort out how we feel, why we feel that way, and then we're going to heal from it. So in all facets of life, whether it's mental, spiritual, physical wellness, social bias that we're dealing with, or financial literacy and maturity. So that's the purpose of the panel. So now we have Dr. Jandel Crutchfield, my homie from way back. And she is going to talk on social bias, I do believe. Take the floor, Doc.
All right, great. Hey, everyone. My name is Jandel Crutchfield, and I do go way back to the 7th grade with, it's grade 2, but you know. And so thank you for reaching out. Thank you for this panel. I love Black women, and as a school social worker, I was able to support young Black women at schools. Hey, Nicole.
Hey.
Right now, I am a professor, an assistant professor at the UT Arlington School of Social Work. That's the background here. And so I'm in Arlington, Texas area, but of course I'm originally from Louisiana. And so some of the research I'm doing in my job as a professor is just about all of the challenges, the facilitators of racial justice. There's so many things people don't know, you know, if it's the institution, if it's the people, what is it that just keeps us being circling around this question over and over and over again. And so that's where I've tried to center some of my research, particularly in schools, and where you see racial injustice in schools, why that is and what people have done about it and what potentially we can do in terms of training. So that's my background. I teach school social work courses and diversity courses at UTA as well. And so I'm happy to be here. Are we going to do introductions?
Yes. Nicole D Scott, let me unmute you or ask you to unmute yourself.
Hey.
Hey.
How are you?
Doing well. How are you in this storm?
Good, Scott. Yeah, thanks so much for hosting this. I'm delighted to be on. Like most people, I have been watching the weather all day, so I lost track of time because, of course, I've been in my meteorologist mode. So,
yes.
But my name is Nicole D Scott, and I am a mother, very proud of being a mom of a 19-year-old son who is amazing, and at LSU right now studying political science and hope inspiring to work for the CIA one day. So I'm excited about that, having a phenomenal son. I am a daughter. I have my mom is, of course, still alive. My parents are still alive. I am an aunt. So now, because I only have one son, my nieces and nephews are now my other children. So I see just about every day of the week. In addition to that, I am, I am the founder of the Bridge Agency, a nonprofit organization here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, that focuses specifically on addressing the social drivers of crime and everything that relates to alleviating poverty in communities where crime is completely out of control. In addition to that, I am a pastor, a woman of God. I believe I've been in faith leadership almost my whole life. Absolutely love being able to study the Word of God. I really encourage people to build a relationship with Christ for themselves. I believe in relationship over religion. I find that religion binds people, relationship builds people. And so that's what I advocate. That's me.
All All right.
Sorry, I'm coming on late. I couldn't find the Zoom login information. So
I'm sorry.
One on the flyer, and that one is completely different than the one in the email. So that's how I got twisted around.
Sorry about that.
I'm
First
good,
time. All right, Nurse Nikki.
Hey, good afternoon, I think, right?
Afternoon, early evening, whatever you want to call it.
So I hope everyone out there is staying safe. My name is also Nicole. So for that reason, we do try to differentiate ourselves. Most people call me Nikki. I'm a registered nurse. I work at Franciscan Missionaries of Our Lady University as a professor there. I teach nursing. I'm there Monday through Friday. On the weekends, I teach, or I work rather, at Baton Rouge General Mid-City as a, I guess what people call a real nurse. I'm doing nursing at the bedside, taking care of patients, sometimes on a COVID unit and other times on the new unit that's open since the ER has opened back up in Mid-City. So I've been taking care of patients there. I'm also the founder of Nikki Scott Inc., which is a community service development firm, which basically creates projects throughout the city that are feasible and sustainable. And so we've launched the Yoga Noir project and also the One Breath project, which have been thriving pretty much in the city over the last few years. And that's kind of it. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad that you've invited us to all talk about all of these important things today.
All right, awesome. So now that we've got everybody, and Tyra is not here. We're gonna have a video for Tyra. She had a prior engagement come up last minute, so we have a video for Ms. Tyra Banks for the financial maturity and literacy segment. But for now, I'm going to dive in with Dr. Crutchfield. And I want to ask you, what exactly is social bias? Is it an unconscious thing? Is it conscious? Is it, just basically lay it out for me. What is social bias?
Good question. So the word bias, without conscious or unconscious, right? So bias refers to, when you're talking about it being social, there's all kinds of different bias. So a social bias refers to individual people's thoughts, feelings, attitudes about any number of things, and they actually influence how we behave. So that's bias. In terms of whether it's conscious or unconscious, have to use examples to kind of explain, right? So a conscious bias is something that you are actively aware of, that you've been explicitly trained on. And so a bias tends to be something that you're against, right? So it may result in a positive outcome. Like if I have a bias against these, if I'm in a scary movie and I have a bias against a dark alley or something like that. Y'all have seen these commercials, right? Is it Geico?
Yes.
Where there's the running car and everybody's like, no, in a scary movie, you're not supposed to do what actually makes sense. Well, we have all been trained, whether it's by watching scary movies or whatever. We know we're not going to go down a dark alley or be out, in the woods when there's smoke and fog everywhere, right? So that bias against that particular area or a scene like that would actually help us be safe. So there's two different things. The bias is usually against something. And we use that word, I think, in the wrong way sometimes. We'll say something like, well, I love my son. And Nicole D Scott, you said you have a son. So you might say something like, I love my son, but I'm biased. And so it's like, okay, well, if you explain it, maybe you're biased against all the other kids, but you're not biased towards your son. That word you're looking for is preference, right? So bias versus preference. If you are liking something, you have a preference for it. If you are not liking something, you have a bias against it or a bias towards it. And I think we get that term mixed up a little bit. And so bias against something, a conscious bias, something that we're trained in. And the best example I have, because I love sports, I have a bias against the Dallas Cowboys. I apologize for all of you fans out there. And I happen to live in the Dallas area, so it's really hard. And so a conscious bias means from the time that I could remember, I was trained to not like the Dallas Cowboys, to where, if I see Cowboys gear, I'm just like, I have some type of feeling, like a physical reaction in my body. Like, why do y'all not have any Saints stuff around here, right? So that's a conscious bias against the Cowboys. I have a conscious bias against a lot of other teams that are not the Saints, but I was specifically trained on that one because it's a big rivalry, right? So sports, so makeup, right? If you're taught as a woman, we don't really do reds and oranges, right? You're explicitly taught in a conscious bias things that you should stay away from, not do. And socially, it might be people, right? So, no, we don't deal with those people. They don't speak English, explicit things that you hear. So that's a bias. Implicit or unconscious bias are things that we just pick up. And the best way for you to understand how unconscious bias works is if you ask a child something that you don't think they should know and they know it. And you're like, wait, how did that kid know that, right? If you ask like a 4 or 5 year old, but there's actually a study done, and CNN covered it, like which kids in the class are the bad kids in class, and they showed them a color chart, right? So not any faces, every kind of shape, it's a little face, and they're just different colors. So there's nothing different about them but the skin color. Those 4 and 5 year old children will point to the darker skinned child, the darker skin face, and say, that's the bad child. I promise there's not a parent that is going to be teaching a 4 or 5 year old, hey, dark skinned kids are bad, black kids are bad. Societal images, books, movies, cartoons, all of these things lead us to have these unconscious bias. So we're not taught, but sometimes there might just be the absence of something. So if we never see little dark-skinned girls and boys being the strongest in a cartoon, being the most beautiful in a cartoon, being the one that's desired, being the smartest one in the class, but we do see them being the ones that are always in trouble or that are always sneaky or up to something, we internalize that. And so there wasn't just little black boys, little white boys and girls that were pointing to these pictures. It was also little black girls and boys saying, I think the darker kid is the bad kid. And so I think it's important for us, since this is a Black Women's Wellness Conference, to realize that all of this stuff influences us subconsciously, right? So you may not know, but that's the concept of internalized bias, right? Sometimes we have issues with ourselves. And you're like, okay, why am I feeling like this? Like in a funk potentially, or feeling some type of way about Blackness even. Sometimes we pick this stuff up. And so it's like, if you're going into, if you're a firefighter or something like that, you're going into a burning building, you come out and you smell like smoke. So that's the idea of unconscious bias. You have watched enough TV, you have read enough books, you've looked at enough magazines to know what the beauty standards are. Nobody might have ever said, blonde hair, blue eye, thin, whatever, is beautiful, but somehow you know that. And so given that my work is in schools, I see children a lot of times that struggle to wonder and say, well, am I really smart? I don't see people like me that are smart. And that's the concept of representation. You guys have heard that phrase, representation matters, well, what does that mean? That's what it means. That is the only way we're going to be able to subconsciously, unconsciously really believe that we as a people, as African Americans, can do some of the things that we do. Kamala Harris being on the vice presidential debate stage. My 6-year-old daughter is not going to have to wonder as much as I will, having seen her and having that as a regular image, right? So I have some more notes here. Let's see.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so this would be, well, I'm going to say from the point of view that I see it, this would be a largely American phenomenon, or is this is something that is European that was brought to America? So it's like from imperialism. It's something that's branched off from history.
I think it's branched off from history in terms of colonialization and making a difference, right? So if you're going to, and so Monday is what I'm calling Indigenous Peoples Day, but a lot of people in this country call it Columbus Day. So it's fitting to talk about how Europeans went around the world and saying, we are superior to you. And so the differences then had to be made in terms of how minority people or people in the countries that they were trying to colonize were different. So the language, right? A big one, right? You guys are speaking a primitive language that is not German, Spanish, that kind of thing. And so the making of differences, I think were exploited, were really highlighted in a way that even subtly, you would notice that, hey, there's something different about these people. That's why they're being subjugated or something like that. I think one of the ways to kind of deal with that and correct that is to promote Blackness and be okay with your Blackness, right? So I spent some time in South Africa. I spent some time in Kenya. And, I think there's an interesting phrase that sometimes we see negatively, like we laugh about it. We call it CP time. Y'all know what that means, right? If some folks are showing up late, they're running on CP time, meaning colored people time, meaning late, whatever, they come whenever. That's an example of what you asked, Aaron, in terms of the imperialist effects or a bias against this kind of laissez-faire. Oh, we were hanging out, so we were just kind of showing up late. We had other things to do. And it's not innate. It's not an innate problem, but it's westernized in terms of this timing. So I said, I skipped the main part of the story, right? So in Kenya, in South Africa, noticing how those people, African people, actually embrace colored people time. Like, it is well known within societies there that I will show up after I have had a conversation with someone. Like, there's no way that, Aaron, it's a good example. I don't know how many years it's been since I've seen you. If I am going to a meeting that starts at 6 and I run into you, Aaron White, who I've not seen in years, I am expected to place relationship over getting to whatever that meeting is on time. And so but there has to be this give and take, right? So the consideration has to be on both ends. It has to be for me stopping to talk to you, but then when I get to wherever I'm going, those people also have to say what? Oh, really? You ran into Aaron? Did you have a great conversation? Fantastic. Instead of, oh, here they go. They on CP time, right? So that whole concept that I've even embraced. So, I've said it before too. Yeah, they late. They on CP time. That is an example of how it has been totally turned around on us as something that was a benefit, and still currently is a benefit in African countries where the culture says relationship and connection is more important than this kind of Western, sometimes ideal of, cut people off so you can get where you got to go, right? Don't talk and converse and talk about family and really get into the history and see how people are doing. And I think that is something for Black people, when we talk about kinship, that is a strength that if we aren't aware of bias, we can start to hate that in ourselves, right? Kinship is a lot of the reasons we do what we do. And so taking some of that extra time to be kin, or to take this person in, or kind of the neighborhood, right? It takes a neighborhood to help raise a child, those types of things. That's just an example. So I'm glad you asked that question of how some of the innate values and strengths that we have as a people, if we're not careful, we can buy into those very same biases that may not be explicit. We may not being told, don't do this or this is bad, but because of the way our society is shaped here, we can definitely get that point of view, that picture.
Gotcha. Do either of the Nicoles have anything to say about what she just said? Any questions percolating? Any thoughts?
I just want to echo, I guess, what Dr. Crutchfield just spoke on about building relationships. I find that that is the biggest thing that's missing from the dynamic of our culture as it relates to, like you just said, people who are trying to strive to be greater or in whatever socioeconomic platform they're on. They focus on just getting to that place without building a relationship. And I find that relationships have more value than just arriving to a destination or a platform, you know, where you have gotten there without knowing anybody or having to be able just to have somebody in place where you can say, hey, let me take somebody with me. Or, you know, it's just so much more opportunity, so much more, it's more colorful when you can say you have relationships, you've opened doors for people. And I think that's the strength of what I do. And that's why it's valuable to me. And I know everybody in this culture today, people do not value relationship building anymore. I think that's one of the reasons why our crime rate is extremely high. That's one of the reasons why, because we don't know how to communicate. But at the same time, when it comes down to, for example, look at this voting season that we're in, the main thing politicians go out and do is that's their season to go out and build relationships and meet people in the community, because that's the strength. That's what's, you know, how they get into office. And so I think that's something that we need to be able to carry throughout our entire lifetime, and definitely ingrain into our children, build relationships. I advocate and put that into my son, because there will come a time where I'm not here anymore. So you need to be able to have relationships in place, you know, people you can lean on. So that's a really good point. And I wish we could put that on a billboard somewhere.
Right.
Yes.
And so what that brings to mind for me is compassion, you know, and just consideration for each other as human beings, let alone, you know, color and race and all that. But speaking of compassion, let's talk to the nurse, Nikki. So, hey, so I wanted to ask you a couple questions, but you did your introduction. I'm sorry, I forgot. I'm just had surgery a little while ago, still living off of, you know, recuperation time. But so I wanted to ask, as a nurse, or did you feel that going into nursing, it was because you felt more compassionate toward people, that you were more empathetic toward people, regardless of skin tone, sex, whatever?
So I will go ahead and divulge that I did not choose nursing. Nursing chose me. And to not sound cliche, it was never like that thing that I'm gonna be a nurse. Ever since I was a kid, I knew what I was gonna be, kind of thing. I was actually started out as a major in architecture, believe it or not. Took about 2 months to figure out that wasn't for me, because there was way too much math involved. And so I decided I didn't want to do that anymore, and went into biology. And then someone told me, you know what, you would make a good nurse. Once I got to the end of biology and realized I didn't want to do that either, and I applied and I got in. So I will say this though, that as an instructor and as a nurse of 10 years now, it would be very difficult to do my job if I wasn't a person who was able to be compassionate and take care of people regardless of their social background, their economic background, the color of their skin, their religion, their gender, their whatever, right? I'm able to, and that's why I say nursing is definitely a calling and it chose me. I'm able to go into people's rooms and treat everybody with care and compassion regardless of their background. It's actually crucial. And one of the things that as I teach nursing students or students to be healthcare providers, because actually I teach about 10 different healthcare professions at FranU, is that we cannot teach students how to care, and we cannot teach them to be compassionate. They have to have that. That is an innate thing that you have within you. Either you have it or you do not, right? So we can't teach people to care. We can teach you how to take care of people, but we can't teach you how to have compassion. That's something you already have to have. I hope that answered your question. I really honestly wish I could that I picked nursing. I just did not.
It's fine. It's fine. I just figured, it would roll with what we were saying.
I will say this, that looking back after, because, hindsight, you can look back and see all of the times that you probably took care of somebody, or you showed compassion to someone else, or I had that already in me to do. And it never just occurred to me that nursing was the vocation that I should look into. Because to Dr. Crutchfield's point, I grew up in San Diego, and I did not see any Black nurses. It never occurred to me that I could be a nurse. I didn't have any Black nurses. I didn't have anyone in my family that was a nurse. I had nobody to look at and say, hey, I could do that. So because of that, I don't think it ever even occurred. It was never on my, my list of things that I could possibly do, because I never saw anybody that looked like me doing that. So it really did honestly take somebody to say, you would make a good nurse, for me to even consider applying for nursing school. So it's really important, I think, that kids, and even young adults, they see people that look like them. I teach at a PWI. And so because most of the time when I walk into a classroom, I'm the only person of color in there, I find it's very important that it's very apparent to me that I'm representing for, and I shouldn't feel that way, but I'm representing for women of color when I stand up in front of these people. It's important, it's just as important that the Black students see me as someone, it's very important that the white students see me as someone that is deserving and educated and, capable as it is for the Black students when they come into the classroom and see me. I think it's really important that everyone sees that everyone is capable and able to do their jobs, regardless of their skin color and all of that.
So I have another question for you, and it's just regarding the medical field and Black women in general. So I've noticed just with my personal experience that when I go to the doctor and I have an issue, they're really quick to say, oh, take this pill, or we need to have this surgery, or this and that, or whatever. And I've also been on the side of where it's just like, oh, well, it's just anxiety. Just take some deep breaths, you'll be okay, and just be dismissed. And so we're, Black women are not heard, we're experimented upon, we're dismissed. And I just wonder, is there something that we can do to change that? Or is there some way that we can push society, toward changing that?
So, excuse me, because there's research that actually shows, like, people have done these studies, the numbers are there. But both qualitatively and quantitatively, there's research there to support that women of color and people of color in general, but women of color are regularly dismissed and underdiagnosed for multiple different types of things, to include physical health, pain, mental health issues. The data is there. One of the things that, a couple of things there that has to happen. One, the healthcare providers have to be invested in evidence-based practice, and not everybody is. A lot of people get into their profession and they kind of get into this routine, and then they get jaded, and they don't go back and look at the studies that support these things that people are saying. So that's one thing. They have to be invested in the research and go back and look at the numbers, and look at themselves and see if there's any kind of implicit bias that they might have towards people of any other background other than theirs, that they might be just projecting onto their practice. That's one thing. And the other thing is that those of us that have done the research, myself, other, healthcare providers that understand that's what's going on, has to be an advocate for those patients. And so that's what I spend a lot of my time doing, is advocating, especially for our patients that are like sickle cell patients, for instance. They come in and a lot of them have been diagnosed since the age of like 5, right? So it means they've been getting pain medicine since they were 5 years old. Chances are their tolerance for pain medicine is going to be extremely high. They also are probably very well educated on what kind of medications that they need that make them feel better. What happens is when they come to the ER and they say, I need to take Dilaudid and I have to have Zofran because those two things work best for me. I take Dilaudid, the pain medicine works, and Zofran to keep me from getting nauseated. People sometimes will say, well, they're drug seeking. Why would they come in here and just know exactly what it is that they want? And that's not a fair analysis of a person. You shouldn't be able to just assume that this person is an addict. On the other side of that is that some of these patients are addicts, right? Because of the nature of the situation. If you've been on medications for this long, your body may be addicted to this medication. And so looking at it from the perspective of addiction is a disease too. So you're looking at not only sickle cell as the disease, but addiction too, and treating those people with compassion instead of being angry with them or treating or casting them off because they have this this other disease process. Like that's something that needs to medically be taken care of as well. And so trying to just advocate for those patients, I do a lot of that. I find that, hey, we're not going to treat them like that. This is what's going on with them. Educate people so they understand better what's going on and not get, into one of those, grumbling matches with the other nurses about how they, this person's always here. He just wants this, don't get into those types of things. So I spend a lot of time advocating and educating, both in the educational and on the practice side.
Okay. I don't know why my throat is like closing up now, but so what?
It's the hurricane.
It's the hurricane. Blame it all on the hurricane. So I had a question in mind. Oh, next topic, I guess. So I wanted to talk about what's going on right now. Like I honestly feel that Black women are being targeted, that we are being targeted because this is some sort of an extermination. We're living in the Jim Crow 2.0 era where it's not necessarily Jim Crow, it's James Crow Esquire. He's got a license, he knows how to get around the law, he knows how to...
James Crow Esquire.
Yes. So I just, as I was trying to communicate this to someone of the opposite gender and a different race, I said, I walk out and I feel like there's a target on my back because I want to go to these protests and I want to do this and I want to do these things. And, his answer was, well, that's just so unfortunate that you feel that way. And
I'll say this, Nicole. I'm sorry, Erin, but one of the things is, you know what? We feel that way because that's what we see. We see it, and well, it's hard for other people to notice things that they can't relate to.
Right.
Not necessarily always that people care or they don't. If you relate,
I think it's going to be even better. And
can't really
just have smell and have that experience, and now you combine that with LeBron James, who.
Say again. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I had to mute somebody.
Oh, okay. I was like, I think I hear some. So, yes. So you can't really. It's hard to have compassion for somebody that you can't relate to. So your male Caucasian counterpart will never, ever understand what a Black woman is feeling. That's just not going to happen, and it's almost unrealistic to expect them to do so. It's just it's not gonna happen. You have to almost put it in terms that they could relate to, and even so they'll never understand how you feel. So I try to make sure I don't take those types of things personally because it's not personal. There's no way that they can understand me, and there's no way I can understand being like them, right? It's not
Privileged.
Yeah. But I do think that there's definitely we're not doing well as a we're doing better than most people would think. Black women are at the forefront of most things now and leading a lot of charges. And I think society is starting to really notice that if they have our attention, that we're able to push and move things and change the trajectory of a lot of things. If you have a Black woman or a group of Black women behind something, it's going to move. They've noticed that.
Okay. Good point. Good point. Nicole D Scott. I have a couple of questions for you. So you were saying that, you know, relationships over religion, and you are very much a proponent of building relationships. So, sorry, I just want to ask, how do you counsel people through these times where it's not necessarily more going on than what, I guess it is more than going on than what would be regularly, but it's more at the forefront, that we have to be like, okay, my example was to my friend. I said, if I get pulled over, I need to have my license and registration out. I have to have my hands on the steering wheel, and my mission is to get home alive. Whereas yours may just be not to get a ticket,
Mm-hmm.
So while we're in this situation, how do you counsel people on the trauma that you experience? Like, being pulled over is scary. It is really scary being a Black person getting pulled over because you don't know if you're going to go home.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you help people deal with that trauma, that mental and emotional trauma from those experiences?
Yeah. I have a question for my twin too later about what she just talked about, but I'll answer this. Answer this now. One of the things that I advocate for people to do is to know that it's okay to feel what you feel. And I think a lot of times we have paralyzed people so much in teaching people not to feel, that when something happens, I believe the fear and anxiety of that moment is what pushes us into a state of shock and panic. Because I believe that a lot of times, especially I know religious leaders, they advocate more that it's a bad thing to feel anxious. It's a bad thing to feel afraid. It's a bad thing. And right now, 2020 has brought about so many different emotions. And to not feel any of that, we would all be in a crazy house right now if we fought all of that, the things that we were feeling. And so one thing that I definitely advocate for everyone to do is to embrace what you're feeling. Like, it's okay to feel anxious. It's okay I do it myself sometimes, and I'm very well connected in the community when it comes to law enforcement. But if I'm driving and I forget to put my seatbelt on, or if I make a quick right turn and I wasn't supposed to, and I see a police officer, I freeze. And even though as well connected as I am in the community, it's just the idea of, oh my God, that's a police officer, and you automatically think the worst. And so one thing that I definitely advocate and tell people to do is it's okay to feel. And even relating that, if I can go Bible, because that's just who I am, Hebrews 4:15, it tells us that we have, and I'm paraphrasing, it tells us that we do not have a high priest, meaning we don't have a God who does not feel what we feel, right? So we have, if you are a person of faith, because I don't want to assume everybody is a person of faith. If you are a person of faith, the Bible tells us that Christ felt the same things that we feel when he was human, right? But he was without sin. And so I think that's the thing that we need to learn how to teach people, is that it's okay to feel. Even Christ experienced the same feelings. Every emotion that you can ever have or feel, he experienced every last one of those emotions. And so there's no harm in that. And I think that's the first thing. The second thing is to learn how to express what you feel. Because when there is no outlet, when there is no positive coping mechanism in place, then you sort of kind of feed into negativity. And you allow your mind to pull you into spaces that can lead you down a rabbit hole that you may never come out of, And that's where I find that we, especially people of color, when we feel, we automatically react if we don't know how to cope. And we react in a negative way. That's why Black women are often given the label of being angry, right? because when we start to feel some kind of way, people automatically assume, because they've seen Black women don't know how to respond to what they feel, they just get mad, right? So the next thing is to definitely journal, find a healthy coping mechanism, and also learn to vent up, right? As a person of faith, as a woman who works in the community, I always pride myself on making sure the person that I can call and vent to, I'm venting up and not venting down, meaning I'm going to someone who has the capacity to not only give me back the wisdom that I need to hear, but knowing that I'm safe in confiding in them. And sometimes it could be a family member, it can be a close friend, or it could just be, for one, prayer. Prayer has been the greatest space and safe space for me, venting up.
Okay. Let's see. So I know we have a couple other people on here, and I wanted to ask if they had any questions before we started talking amongst each other again. I haven't seen any questions come up in the chat, but Nicole D, I know you want to ask your twin something. You had a question or a comment for your twin.
Yes. So twin, tell me this, because I have been dreading going back to the hospital for my own personal care because of the fear of COVID, because of the fear of all that I have saw come to light about Black women in healthcare. And there are so many statistics out there that basically show that we are being killed when we go to the hospital, pretty much. How do you get over that fear? And I'm going to have to add you to my appointments personally so you can come with me. All right.
So I will say that to that last part, I've gone to appointments with people, and I'll gladly go with you. But to get over the fear, I'm gonna just piggyback off of what you said. It's okay to have feelings. Okay, so I even have my list of people that I do not want taking care of me if I have to go to the hospital. All right, so I mean, very real, right?
Right.
I've spoken to I've talked to police officers of color who said they're even worried when they're not in uniform, what happens when they get pulled over. So I mean, we all have these fears, and they're rational. They're not irrational at all, because they're based on some sort of fact and research. It's okay to feel that way. I do advocate for having somebody with you that has some knowledge of what's going on. I advocate for people hitting their phone up for Google when they have a question. Back in the day, we would say, oh, stop going on Google because it's just gonna say you have cancer, you're gonna die. But these days, it's a lot. It's a better search engine than it's been in the past. And so I do advocate for looking for, second opinions, going to see other doctors, asking for another, nurse if that you don't feel comfortable with that person. If they walk in the room, they didn't wash their hands, tell them, look, I didn't see you wash your hands. No offense, but could you wash your hands again? Can you change your gloves? You can speak up for yourself, and having somebody else come with you that can speak up for you is always a great thing to do. All of the time. I've had a lot of patients that have concerns about being in the hospital. I always ask, do you have any concerns? Because if you don't ask, sometimes they won't say that they do, right? A lot of times it's getting the question. So if there's any healthcare providers that are going to watch this or are watching this, be sure to ask your patients, your clients, do they have any concerns, to open the door to be able to offer them the opportunity to speak about what their concerns may be. Most people have a concern. I literally hardly ever have anyone say, nope, I'm fine. Like that just doesn't happen. I mean, all the way down to, look, they keep bringing me grits and I keep telling them I want pancakes for breakfast. I don't care what it is, right? It's a real concern. Okay, that's fine. Let's see if I can get you something else for breakfast. But offering them that space. Your own personal how can I get past some of these things is going to depend solely on your own comfort and what's going to make you feel comfortable when you go. I literally just changed all of my doctors and personal care providers to people that I trust. I didn't have that in the past, right? But I switched all of my providers to somebody that I know is going to be a good team member. If there's something that, so that's what I call the people around me. They're my team. You guys are on my team. I know I can call, I can vent up to Nicole Scott if I need to vent, right? So, you know, I have my team, and I made sure that my providers, my personal care, my medical care providers are people that I trust and that are part of my team. So do some research. Word of mouth is wonderful. Make sure that you ask around. So-and-so is going to be doing my procedure. Do you know about them? What do you know about them? Ask them questions. How many times have you done this before? Is there anything negative that I might see out there about you? Just be vocal, ask your questions. You have a right to do that. And that's another thing a lot of people forget, is that they have a right to ask questions about their own personal health care. I've been really good about allowing my kids to do that. I teach them that as children. We were taught to just do what we're told as children. My kids are able, they'll go in the doctor's office and say, I do not feel comfortable with this. Why am I getting this shot? What's in that injection? The youngest one will tell you to go back and wash your hands. Nia has no trouble telling people to go wash their hands. It's just, I don't feel comfortable with that. If I have braces, is it going to mess up how I play trumpet? I mean, they have all of these questions, and I allow them to have the questions. It's very, very, very good spiritual hygiene to be able to ask questions.
I wanted to piggyback off of that too. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. I just want to relate it back to something that, maybe more innate for us, is that, Nicole D, that level of relationship that you talk about is important in getting care, right? Like, we care about that. So it's okay for that to be kind of one of the criteria, right? Like, is this somebody that puts me at ease? Especially if you have anxiety. I need to have someone who puts me at ease. I can't tell you the countless people we have left, and particularly with my kids, because you haven't put me at ease. I have felt like we were judged, for having a cavity or something like that, and that is not something I'm going to subject my children to. Right? There's no deficit. Like, that's why there are dentists, because people have you know what I mean? That's why there are doctors, because people have diabetes. So all of those things, I think the relationship in all of these arenas, if we think about policing, and I'm going to have to jump off in a second, but that is the kind of concept of community policing. So think about the thread that runs through all of these sectors of society where we're having issues, is that when there's a lack of relationship, there's real damage, and potential hurt and harm to Black people.
Right. And Nikki, I got a friend who she's on the call via her phone, and she just texted if you could recommend a good OBGYN as well as a GP, a general practitioner.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So there's so many general practitioners that are doing great work in the community. Doctors, the first thing I would say is to check your insurance. If you have insurance, check your insurance and see who is covered in your network, because that's going to, obviously for obvious reasons, who you'll be able to see unless you want to pay out of pocket. But let me see, OBGYN, there's, I like Dr. Lydia Lewis. There are actually two Dr. Lewises. They're both Dr. Lewis. That's funny. One's Lydia Lewis, and the other is another Black OBGYN, and her name is Dr. Lewis as well. I would look either of those up. And then for your primary, I would definitely look into your insurance to see who's in your network, and check with them and see who's in your network first. And then once you check and see who's in your network, then you ask around and see, you get your word of mouth, have you gone to this person? How did you like them? That kind of thing. Because unless you are able to get coverage for that provider, it's going to be difficult. You can't just, make an appointment with someone and then, you don't have coverage there, or you can't go there. That's kind of a more difficult situation. But OBGYNs, both Dr. Lewis's are amazing. I love them both. The Women's Center is always a great spot to go. They're really good and take good care of their patients there as well.
Can I ask a question about the Doctors Lewis? Is it Lewis or Louis?
Great, that's a great question. They're both Lewis.
Okay.
Both of them. Yes. And one's in Baton Rouge and one's in Zachary. And I think Dr. Lydia Lewis and Zachary may also see patients in Baton Rouge. I'm not sure. You can't, don't hold me to that.
Okay.
Yep.
So.
Well, Nicole, Nikki, twin, you're going to the doctor with me. Okay.
You let me. Look, and I'll tell you this too. We have like I said before, you have a right to speak up and say that these things are, you know, what they are and the fears that you have. In any situation, I've heard stories about how when they roll their window down, as soon as they roll the window down with the police officer, they say, listen, I'm afraid. Right away, right? I'm scared. Okay, you can go to the doctor. I'm afraid. I know that my chances of surviving a surgery or this childbirth or whatever is a lot lower than my white counterparts, and I'm afraid. There's a lot to be said about speaking and naming the feeling that you have and saying it out loud, because once you've said it out loud, then you can work through that and work with it. There's nothing that can be done for something that you won't speak up about. So you have to be able to say, be vocal, right? I feel that I'm being stereotyped right now. I feel like I'm not being heard. I feel like, you know, you're putting me in a box. I'm anxious about this. I'm worried that if I have this, whatever, medication, that it's not gonna work for me as well as it works for maybe other people because the research shows this, right? It's okay to speak up and talk about those types of things. It sure beats getting that out of the way at the first appointment than 4 or 5 appointments down the road and you decide you don't like this person. It's really about building the relationships, kind of like what you said before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I want to, Erin, shout out my sister, my youngest sister. She works in the healthcare industry for Blue Cross Blue Shield, just understanding the dynamics of insurance and all of that stuff. And she just posted in the chat that open enrollment starts November. Yeah.
I was wondering, I was like, y'all have a connection. I don't know.
That's my sister.
Y'all have a connection. I didn't know what it was.
It is open enrollment time. Y'all need to hop on top of that. And if you already have insurance, you know somebody that doesn't, make sure you spread the word. It's very important to have coverage so you can get all your things taken care of. I just went to, I think I posted, was that last week, Nicole? I got my blood work done, my flu shot. Also sharing that so that other people can see other people look like them that are going to the doctor and doing what they got to do is very, very influential. Make sure you share when you go to the doctor or you're, you know, doing what you have to do to take care of yourself so other people can see that that's the norm. It's the norm for us to take care of ourselves. That's not the exception.
Right. That's a good point.
Good point. I'm gonna try to play the video from Tyra, but I'm gonna wait till a little bit later to do that since we seem to be on a roll, bouncing off of each other. But I did have a question. I forgot it. It was a good one, and it was well, one of you. I can't remember which twin was talking, but it was.
You got to write those down, Frank.
I know. I was right. You know, it was about the Lewises, and that's what that took precedence over what I was actually going to ask. So let's, I guess, bring it back to just compassion for each other, taking care of each other in this time, again, with the relationships, because that seems to be the core of what we're talking about right now. And you know, it's not something that, like, I didn't want to put together this panel and say, okay, well, Black women only because only Black women are feeling this way. I mean, that is the case, but I wasn't trying to make it non-inclusive. So, but I wanted people that are going to be able to relate to each other, that can relate to the experiences that we have, because everything that we've said, we've all felt it at some point or another. I did want to mention, I do have a couple of friends, a couple of Caucasian friends that are just like, I called one of them because we do a market together, and I called him about something having to do with the market. And he was just like, how are you doing right now? And I really appreciated that. Like, it almost brought me to tears that he would even ask, how I was doing, that he cared. And we know each other just by sight. We recently learned each other's names and exchanged phone numbers, but it wasn't like we had built this great friendship. So I guess I'm going toward, how do we build that community, and how do we get that to span beyond just kinfolk, because, and then with the Breonna Taylor case, like, there's a lot going around that all skinfolk ain't kinfolk. So how do we get past this? And this is just, we're talking about what's going on right now. The next time we meet, we'll talk about what's going on, at that time. But this is something that has been really on my mind, that has been, all the names, I can't even name them all, but, Tatiana Jefferson stands out to me because she went to Xavier and I went to Xavier. Like I said, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd. How do you do that to a person? And like that lack of compassion, just, it really does not even make sense to me, honestly. So how do we get through to people like that and let them, and without violence, and let them know that what they're doing is wrong? How do we get to be seen as equals with these people?
I honestly think that it has to start at the level of education, like pre-K, when the child is born. I believe that is the place, because if you notice, kids don't come into the world with biases. They're that, and I believe that as they grow into, as they start to matriculate through school, that we have to be very intentional about putting certain classes where young people can understand that it's okay for somebody to have a different skin color from me, different personality as me, and they still be treated the same way I expect to be treated. And that's something that I don't see. I know growing up, there were all types of courses in school, but nowadays it's like those courses have drifted, the civics is gone. Different things are being taught in African-American studies, or it doesn't exist at all. And that's what's missing. And I don't think that we have that champion of a voice in education in our community amongst ourselves as people of color to actually advocate that somebody put that back into school. I think we advocate and we fight over the wrong battles, but I believe that is something that definitely needs to happen. Somebody needs to stand up to the school board. Somebody needs to say, hey, the school board system is completely comprised more so of African-American students than it is of any other race. We need to be able to make sure that people who are not African-Americans are taking sensitivity courses, that they understand the biases that exist and understand that they are, that they have preferences, or they have preferential treatment that exists just because of their color that's not given to African-American students. And so until we can level the playing field where they understand that a bias exists, I think we're just pretty much running in circles. And that's the sad part about what we see now, because God forbid our kids and Nikki's kids, or if your mother, they're going to grow up and fight these same battles that we're trying to fight today.
I agree with that 100%, that it needs to be in the schools. And what happens on a collegiate level is that we get those students that went through their educational system never having that education, Nicole. And so then we have to do the work on a collegiate level. And so especially since the students that I teach are going to go out into the healthcare field and take care of people, majority of them probably that look like me. I'm very, very adamant about teaching social determinants of health within the healthcare system. So, you know, I talk to the students a lot about biases and those types of things. And we do simulations around that so that they can kind of have time to sit down and debrief and talk about what, you know, the feelings that came up or the things that they may have heard. So we can go ahead and debunk some myths and things like that while we're at it. And to kind of go along with your, what you're saying about being able to be treated as equal. So one of the things that I had that came up rather recently, 2020 has been a long 5 years. My God. Right. So, but it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
I went to the president of our of Fran U, and we had a conversation. A lot of the universities were having conversations about like how are they going to address the social injustice, Black Lives Matter, and all of these types of things that were going on in the community. I know that even elementary schools were having the conversation about how do we now tackle some of these things because it is on the forefront and we need to make sure that we're addressing it. And we had an issue where we weren't sure, and I say we, not me, but as a university, we're not sure if they wanted to have a diversity and inclusion council. I did write a very long, extremely long letter to the president of the college, and I will fast forward this story and saying we had a meeting and we now have a council. And we will be, you know, further discussing this types of things and how to implement it into our curriculum and talk more with the faculty on how they address these types of things within their courses. So that is, you know, one of those things where it's going to take a lot of education to move forward. Now, when the Diversity and Inclusion Council was created, it was appointed to two white women to lead the. Well, before you go there, though, let me say this. I thoroughly believe that injustice and those types of things are not our problem to fix because we didn't create it. So if they want to have white women to then take this and say, we're going to fix this problem, I am 100% behind that. Like, I think that they should fix it. We are on the panel. There are Black people, I think at least 4 or 5 of us that are on this committee together to help, you know, kind of guide and steer it where it needs to go. But I really do feel like the message needs to come from people that are causing the issue. Because initially we did go, what? But they were like, wait a minute. Not our problem to fix, right? We have a problem, but it's not ours to fix. And so, you know, we might never, ever have that, whatever that is that makes us feel like we're equal. But what we do need to do is understand whose responsibility it is to fix the problem.
That's a good point. Because I've never even thought about it that way. I just always see this insurmountable, you know, pile of
realize that's been put on us too by white supremacy, that it's your problem, you need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and all that stuff. It's always been put upon us to fix the problem when we didn't cause the problem.
That's a good point, Nick.
That is a good point.
Great point. And that's why I think historically we have become the cleanup people behind other people's mess.
Yeah.
Especially Black women. Yeah.
Yes. That's why when you come to my yoga classes, I say it is okay to rest. I put y'all down for a nap. Like, go to sleep. People be looking around like, I'm afraid to go to sleep. Go to sleep. Take a nap. It's okay. I mean, we just are so like trained to be in the grind culture and to keep moving and to fix all these problems, and you always have to be smarter than your white counterpart or you won't never go anywhere, and all of these things, all this pressure that we have that not only, you know, we put on ourselves, they put it on us, but we put it on ourselves too. And you know, we never say, you know what, you have a right to relax, take a vacation, go get a pedicure, get your hair did, do nothing, watch Netflix all day. You can do that too. you have a right to do whatever, makes you feel good.
I needed that. I needed
Right.
And I need it now.
Yeah.
And it's a hurricane. I should be in bed. Like
Right.
all of the things.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
Something that Nicole D said about the classes not being the same. Classes are not available anymore in the curriculum. I grew up with posters all over my bedroom walls of Stevie Wonder, Jackie Robinson, Etta James, like all of these people who had made all of these accomplishments that looked like me. And we had a literal library of, people that looked like us. And so I just assumed that was how every Black kid grew up. That's what I thought. And when I went to Xavier. And so, I got to African-American history, and somebody did in the class, a Black student, female, who, never mind, she did not know who Harriet Tubman was. And I was like, how are you in college? You're like 22. How have you never heard of Harriet Tubman? And these are things that I realized I took for granted because it was just all around me all the time. And then I really did have to give that, respect to my mom, because she did that when I was thinking that's how all Black kids grew up, right? That's what I thought. So that was just a statement, to the point that you made about the lack of courses and the curriculum and all of that.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why I am so intentional about doing the work that I do within communities that are disconnected, because it is assumed that everyone has the same access to education and information as the rest of the world. But there are literally a ton of families, of mothers, of fathers that have not placed that knowledge from previous history into their young people. And it's sad, but I've seen it on so many scales, where you have young people who have no idea that Martin Luther King existed, or that he was married to Coretta Scott King. Like there are people to this day that don't realize that Dr. Martin Luther King came to Baton Rouge to get the bus boycott from the leaders that were here in our community, right there from the Lincoln Theater in South Baton Rouge, So there is a whole bunch of history, and it took me becoming a board member for the Lincoln Theater project that we are working on bringing back, and it's in construction, and that whole thing is going to be soon. So that, be on the lookout for that. But it took me actually studying that as a board member to understand that. For one, I got angry. This is just a side note. How do we allow history like that to just become to sit where it is the way it looks right now? When you think about the Lincoln Theater and how it sits in the community, and it basically is a building that is just blighted property. How do we have a piece of culture and history where you find people like James Brown and Mahalia Jackson came and performed? How do we allow it to get to that condition? And it just goes to show you how the stories and the information is not being passed down in a way where we can value it, to treasure it, to make sure it reaches the next generation. And that's a problem, because I believe that what we value has shifted so much in life, among our own culture. We value the wrong things, and we place the priorities on things that should not have value at all.
This is true. And, we've, our culture has been devalued as well. From other, aspects. We've been told you're not this and you're not that. And at some point, our elders, they get old and they turn into ancestors, and the younger people that are left behind that have no idea that these things were going on, or they don't find the value in it because they've been told all this time that, have any value. And then all of these things, like you said, they sit up there and they become blighted properties. So I'm so glad that, you know me, I've been going around just taking pictures of all of these things and going, what are we going to do with this?
Right.
So I'm so glad that, you know, that's something that's happening in our community. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Tammy just made a point. She said it's a good point. To piggyback off of what was just said, it also has to do with a lack of resources. So money, connections, and that's a big part of it too. And then I feel like, and I'm not an expert in any of these matters, just feeling how I feel. You know, like you said, our priorities have shifted, our values have shifted. It's all about the bag, you know, or, you know,
Well, society tells you that, right? Like society tell you, if you look around, the people that are doing well, apparently, like, because from what we can see, are people that have access and money and all of those things. There is a very interesting way that, you know, money is allocated also. So you got to think about it like that. You know, if you look at different communities or different neighborhoods, which ones are getting more money, which school systems are getting more money, where's the money being allocated to, which hospitals are being able to be funded, what programs are being funded, what after school programs are being funded, all of these things that, and in what neighborhoods are these afternoon programs being funded in? Are the parents having to go and sell all of these cookies to get this thing done? Or is there somebody that works somewhere that's a parent that's like, oh, I can get money for this and funding all of the uniforms for this little football team?
Right.
There's so many aspects to that, you know, and that trickles down to the children, and they see that, you know. There's kids that are going to always feel entitled because the things that they wanted or needed wound up in their lap. And it's not because of any fault of their own that they looked around and Christmas was always great and uniforms always showed up and they never saw their parents having to go door to door and get money or do all of these things or work exorbitant amount of hours to have those things, right? So there's the haves and the have-nots, and that's always going to be the case until resources and funds are allocated in a way that's more equitable.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yep. Tammy's else down there.
Yeah, she's making a couple points. Exactly. Yep. The only way to be noticed is to be flashy. We're often too flashy and failing. We're not teaching kids at an early age the value of money and savings. That is true.
Yes.
Is the truth.
Yep.
Truth. And I know you have a video that you have about financial wellness and all of that. Yes. But that is, you know, goes with the whole holistic approach that we take to healing a community, is having, you know, not just your physical and mental wellness together, but your financial wellness. And that, to Nicole's point earlier, teaching children from an early age to do these things. I think somebody said, I'm so glad I took that trigonometry course instead of learning how to balance my checkbooks, and nobody ever, you know, like the things that we needed to know how to do in life, we did not learn in school, right? We didn't learn how to we didn't learn how to balance our checkbook in class. Like, I was telling somebody, you know, they're like, well, people don't know how to take care of themselves. Like, you know what? They didn't learn about it in school as a kid, right? When we learned in biology in school, you learned about microorganisms and you learned about cells and you learned about all this other stuff, but you didn't learn about how to take care of, you know, your own body, what foods should be going in, and that pooping is perfectly normal and actually very, very, very good for you. Right. And talking about it out loud and not shaming people for having bodily functions, and what happens when you get sick, and what it happens when, you know, and as you get into be a teenager, that there's 3 holes down there, girls. You know how many people have come to college not knowing that they have 3 holes? Like, you know, it's like, of course we know how to take care of ourselves because we didn't learn our actual selves.
Right.
So in school, we need to be better about, you know, teaching people applicable things in school. Things that you're actually, who cares so much about a periodic chart in the 6th grade? Like, and right? Like, do you understand that sweat and bacteria is what's causing you to have this odor? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
this that you need to be learning about. So
Yeah.
And I had to do that on the collegiate level when I taught at Fran U. I mean, before it was Fran U, I was just, I taught microbiology and did the microbiology labs. And I just had to tell them, I would ask questions like, okay, so we have, all these skin to skin interactions on our bodies. This is where the odor is going to happen. This is where the bacteria are going to live. And it was crazy to see like the light bulbs going off in these college students' heads.
Yeah.
Who do the Axe spray down and don't even know why they spray where they spray.
Some friend. Yeah, and so to that point, we do spend a lot of time, what I call backtracking in firefighting when we could have been fire preventing. So, getting in there early. I do volunteer, going to schools, and I know I've been going into schools and doing like teaching yoga, but even when I go to do that, like I talk to them about all sorts of other things. And we just need to have more people in the community that are invested in our youth, like Nicole Scott and some of these other organizations that are in the community, just be more invested in the youth. And I think whoever said it in the beginning about it takes a village to raise a child, and just being that, if you see a kid that's, might have a different opinion that's wrong, or that has feelings or whatever it is that needs to be sorted out, and you're there and you're available, you shouldn't feel like, well, that's not my kid, I'm not going to talk to them. I mean, talk to them. That's like, you could be that one person that changes everything for them. We're so isolated in silos now, and we've gotten away from just being a community and working together.
Yeah.
And then there are those parents though that said, "What did you say to my child? Don't touch my
Right.
child." You gotta be careful.
Well, yeah, but I talk to them too. So that's the thing, right? Like, cause you would say like, I realize that, that's not my child. I realize that I care about them. If you, a lot of times I tell people, if you talk about how you feel about the situation, instead of saying, well, you should have said, and you should have did this. The reason why I'm talking to him is because I care about you, and I care about him. And I just want to make sure everybody's okay. That de-escalates so many things right away. And especially the truth, right?
Yeah.
I just care. And I don't want your child to be hurt, just like I don't want my child to be hurt. I don't want to see your child in the newspaper. I don't want to see you in the newspaper crying about your child, right? I don't want that. And this is the reason why I said it. And I'm just trying to be, that community that we need. We need that. And we've gotten to a point where somewhere along the line, somebody told us we didn't need to have that. And it's just dismantling everything.
Where I think that fell apart is slavery and sharecropping. Your elders are taking care of their children, and so we're not getting the care that we need. We don't know how to pass that on,
Yeah, you can't do what you can't see.
Right.
Start taking care of ourselves and doing better, our kids are going to see that, and they're going to know that it's totally acceptable for you to take an hour to yourself when you get home and not talk to anybody. And it's acceptable to make sure, you know what I mean? Like, these things are okay, right? It's okay to take care of yourself, but if you never see your parent or the person that's taking care of you, or, do those things, you're not going to know that it's okay to do.
Right.
And I think another huge part of that too is like when you say, people can only do what they see, is what people see now is so far different than what we were exposed to in our lifetime. You have social media, you've got all the reality TV shows, and all of that source. So it sets a new precedent in people's minds to live in a world that really doesn't exist. And they try to apply what they see, other people do on social media, rap videos and all of this stuff to their everyday life. So we're fighting against a lot.
Yeah.
You think about that?
Yeah, I'm extremely intentional and mindful when I put on social media because of that. Whether we want to be or not, we're usually people that are influential. So you're careful about what it is that we're putting out into the to the public, so that we're making sure we're being, you know, good role models or modeling that we want to see, you know.
Yeah.
And not everybody's like that. And then I do, my children, I know I teach them, you know, that everything on the internet is not necessarily real, you know, so that, you know, they realize that, you know, they're not going to try and model themselves behind other people, to be their own, be themselves. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and play the financial literacy part, if you guys don't mind.
Sure, let's hear it.
Let me see. Okay. Newfangled technology for me, so I'm gonna try to do this screen share and all that good stuff. So let's see. We can find Tyra. Here it is.
Hi, I'm Tyra Banks, author of The Purposeful Woman. I'm a licensed financial and business coach, and over the last decade, I've helped nonprofits, businesses, and individuals get started on the path to living their passion and their purpose, and organizing.
Drag it over to the screen, Erin.
Do what?
Drag it over so we can see it.
One is a lack of financial maturity. Two is a lack of financial know-how. And three is not really having the financial means to make the choices that you love to make. And so today I want to draw on a little bit of my
Can you see?
experience to help you work through those, because I believe
We can hear it, but we can't see it.
Oh, goodness.
our world, all the things that
Hold on. Let's try it again.
Make sure it's on the screen that you're sharing.
Oh, yeah. That was an intricate part of what I was trying to do. Thank you very much, Nicole.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Tyra Banks, author of The Purposeful Woman. I'm a licensed financial and business coach, and over the last decade, I've helped nonprofits, businesses, and individuals get started on the path to living their passion and their purpose, and organizing the money so they can accomplish that. Now, many times when I sit down with you, a lot of the money choices really boil down to a few things. One is a lack of financial maturity. Two is a lack of financial know-how. Three is not really having the financial means to make the choices that you love to make. And so today I want to draw on a little bit of my life experience to help you work through those, because I believe it is time in our nation, in our world, with all the things that we see going on, it's time for us to have money in our community. And it's going to start with us ladies. You know that we are the ones that get it done, right? So let's dive right in. Number one, let's talk about financial maturity. Honestly, I believe that it starts choosing yourself. I'll tell you a little bit about how I grew up. I grew up an only child, very socially awkward, 100% unnerved. And I always wanted to love and show love. I was always a naturally giving person. Every time I had something, I felt like I wanted everybody else to have it, whether that was knowledge, material things. I was never really attached to my material things. We'd give away TVs, give away clothes, and especially money. Because I wasn't investing in myself, I didn't really see the worth in Tyra. I wasn't prioritizing things that I needed to do for myself. So if anybody had a financial emergency, Tyra was there. Can anybody identify with that? And I mean, it's crazy because in many instances, I knew better than to allow somebody to get a utility in my name. I knew better than to add a person to my bank account. A lot of these things, I knew better. But I would put other people's needs before my own, because I had not laid out certain priorities for Tyra. I wasn't taking myself seriously. I had tapped into what I really wanted to, what I wanted my life to look like. And so those financial priorities weren't on the list. Surviving was on Tyra's list. And everybody everybody else struggling to survive, especially in my community, and sometimes in my family. Other people were working through survival too. I felt like, well, I have a little bit, let me step in and help. Well, let me tell you the downside to that little bit. If you don't slow down to find out what you want your life to look like, then you'll stay in a scratching and survival place. If you don't slow down to say, wait, I have goals and dreams, then you won't discipline yourself to accomplish them. And many times that's going to mean investing in courses and classes and traveling and conferences and books. That's going to mean taking time to market your business, your ministry, your gifts. And if you don't put aside any money for that, it's going to make it very difficult for those things to come true. Trust me, I did it. And I lived on such a crazy budget, robbing Peter to pay Paul, that often after I paid my bills and other people's bills, that there was little or no money left to invest in my dream goals. So what that mean? That meant things like pushing my projects off. That meant not launching things that were opportune at the time. I often look at, if I started my podcast in 2013 when I wanted to, where would I be today in that moment? Because now that market is flooded and my voice is yet to truly be heard in that space, right? You know what else happens when you don't prioritize your passion and your purpose, investing in your gifts? I'll tell you another thing that happens. You often try to find the cheapest staff or the cheapest labor, cheapest contractors to get your projects. That sometimes means you can't pay people what they're worth, or you're working with other people who are really swamped because they're charging you a lower price. They really can't afford to do it that cheap. I'm telling you, it's a headache and a nightmare. I want to help you skip that step. So I want you to start off by writing down a couple of things. Number one, I want you to envision what you want your life to look like. You wake up every day, what kind of car you want to drive, the neighborhood or home you want to live in. What are the types of things you want to provide to your kids? I was telling somebody recently, going to get a 6-figure job is not that exciting to me because I want my child in acting, drama, and swimming year round. And so if I'm not able to, and basketball, so if I'm not able to provide that kind of life, then going to get tied down to somebody 6 figures is not that exciting to me, right? You have to do more than that to get me really juiced up. Why is that? It's because the level of lifestyle that I would love to live, the level of lifestyle that I prepare my child for. Right now, my baby plays basketball. He swims in the summer. He's able to do acting, private acting lessons. All those things are because Tyra made certain financial priorities. And that meant not going out and buying a BMW, right? That meant getting a Chevy. That meant staying in my same house, keeping my same mortgage, right? And so what is the way that you want your life to look? That way you can back into your priorities that way. And that might mean giving up your gym membership that you never use, right? And so what does it mean to adjust your budget to fit your true priorities? I know that I want to save well for retirement. So what does that mean for going out to eat every week or ordering lunch all the time on waiter? What changes would I have to make to live that life? So that's step one. Step two, what are the projects that you always wanted to get off the ground that you have not invested in? You over there trying to make your own flyers because you're like, well, I can't really pay somebody $65 right now. What are the projects, the book, the podcast, the YouTube channel, the ministry, the outreach, the nonprofit that you've always wanted to start? Write that down. And if you don't know the answers to these questions yet, it's your homework to go deep. Because I promise you, I honestly believe everybody is born with some passion and some purpose. I volunteered even with people who have learning disabilities or maybe have lower IQs. Guess what? They have things that they want to do too. And they have hobbies and passions and small businesses that they started. And so I promise you, everybody, when I tell you everybody has something to contribute to this world, I believe it too. And I believe that prioritizing your money in a way that helps you accomplish that is going to be a life changer. So right. Next, I want you to comb through your budget and find out in what ways am I truly investing in myself? In what ways am I truly spending money on getting to that dream? And it could be, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, so I want to try 5 things. And I'm going to invest some money into trying one of those every year. So whatever that is, it could be I've always wanted to go back to school, but I never did pay off a certain student loan that I messed up, or Pell Grant that I messed up years ago, and it's not allowing me to go back right now. Have you put money in the budget to fix that? So make a list. Write down in what ways are you investing in yourself, and then I want you to make a list of what things you can cut to create the opportunity to invest in yourself. This is key, because I tell you what, especially as a mom or as a community woman, as a person who loves my family, who loves to give to my family, who wants to be there for my family, I promise you one of the hardest things is going to be to find ways to invest in you. And I know, I'm telling you, that's easy. It is easy for me to find things to spend on my baby, to find money to spend on my baby. It is so easy for me to say, oh, such and such started on business. I want to pay $25 for this. I want to make a $100 contribution to that. That's easy. What's hard to do is to say, I deserve, I'm worth it, and I'm about to do something. I want you to write down what ways could you cut back? What spending could you change? Maybe it's not that you cut certain things completely out, but it's that maybe you prioritize a couple $100 a year toward your own development. And that's going to help you to get that financial maturity. That's going to help you to identify what are the reasons why I'm spending money in ways that don't make sense. I'll give you an example. I had a client that I sat down with. She's getting prepared for retirement. She's in her 40s. And I said, love, we're just honest. You got 20 good more years to work. After that, you're not going to want to do this. And so let's start looking at what could you rearrange so that you can set up some retirement for yourself. And when we looked at her credit card spending, it was out of control. And I said, listen, we can get this down. We can figure this out. Let's renegotiate rates. So we talked about some of the strategies that she can use. And one of the comments that she made was that, well, Tyra, I just don't know if I can stop spending on my credit card. And literally, I got a baby shower this weekend, and I need to go spend money on that. And I was like, friend, that's not a good idea. Okay, you are beyond this credit card utilization. I don't think it's a great idea. I said, what if you just give me my card? She's like, oh, then I'll look cheap. I'm like, okay, who cares what you look like? I think the person should be happy you came to the baby shower. And she was just like, no, but I buy gifts for everything. I buy gifts for everybody. And people think that I have money. I'm married well. She married a man that was well off. And I said, I understand all of this. And I'm not mad that you want to give in this baby shower. But what I'm mad about is that you're going to put maxing out this credit card over making the best decision for your long term. So the truth is, you can't do both right now. If she had made a lot more money, I would not be hating on her choice. But because she didn't make enough money to pay the credit card and to save, she wasn't in a position she couldn't really afford. She was mortgaging away her future, trying to live good, ride good, look good, and appear well to others today. And that meant that she was either going to have to work until she died. Let's be real, y'all. How many people you know just woke up and said, I want to go work at Walmart in my 80s? They don't really want to do that, right? And if they had unlimited money, they would be traveling somewhere, they would be volunteering, they would be doing something else for their life. I promise you, they would not be going to work somewhere. It's just not most people, right? They would find some other work that was meaningful to them. And I say that to say because I've sat down with so many people over the years that I can tell you from personal experience, most people don't plan to be in that position. We just fail to do it. And I want to help you with that. It's going to start by making decisions. That's where that financial maturity is going to come from. And a couple things on generational wealth. When we talk about building generational wealth for our families, for our community, it's going to start with owning assets. Another conversation I had that I thought was funny, because I made some just stupid decisions when I was younger, y'all, and got a bunch of student loan debt. I can't even describe to you how Sally Mae said, we want $1,300 a month. I was like, we want $1,300. Crazy moment. And I tell you these things about myself so that you'll know I didn't just follow some perfect path and wake up okay. I went through terrible credit. I went through not having the discipline to take care of the things that I needed to take care of that were in front of me. And so I would literally rob Peter to pay Paul, to pay other people's bills, y'all. This is no exaggeration. Any of my close friends and family can tell you I've made dumb decisions like that, where I'm paying my thing late to get somebody else out of an emergency. Especially if they ask me more than once, y'all. I was a sucker for that. Without realizing that oftentimes people continue to repeat certain cycles in their lives, and you can't help them with it. I don't care how many times you bail them out. They're going to end up back in that same spot because it's something energetically, something in their spirit that they've got to work out. There's a reason why they're making the choices they're making. Same reason why you're making the choices that you're making. It's because you want to be loved. It's because you don't want to be left out. It's because you don't want your because you feel guilty for having money. Because I can tell you that was one struggle I definitely had. If I had too much, I felt guilty that other people around me didn't have enough and I had so much. Let me tell you a secret. I really didn't have so much. It was that I wasn't prioritizing the things I should have been investing in, right? Like buying property, like buying assets, like investing in my business and getting myself to another level in my company. And if I had done a lot of those things, guess what? I would have been in an even better financial position to help you. That's the crazy part. The more money you make, the better you do, the more stable you are, is the better help you can be. If you don't slow down and put those things into place, I promise it's going to be difficult to get there. So I want you to examine, what are the reasons why I am struggling? I've sat down with clients who, they're doing okay financially. It's not that they're running out of money at the end of the month. But guess what? They're over leveraged, highly leveraged. They got vacations on credit cards. They've got $80,000 weddings that they're still trying to pay off. They're living for everybody else. And they're not even excited and happy when they wake up every day. They're going to jobs that they hate because they've got to pay those bills. They've got to make a certain amount of money. Things are going to crumble. They're sending their kids to schools that they can't afford. And y'all, I'm not saying that we all make such terrible decisions that we end up in this spot. It could be the loss of a loved one. So I'm not outruling those things. I'm talking about the decisions we make that lead us to certain really tight spaces. And being very careful of the way that we set up our lives. Because guess what? We want to live. I want you to make a choice today. I will make decisions. The older version of myself. Decisions that the older version of myself can. There is a woman inside of you right now who's going to turn 60. She's going to turn 70. She's going to turn 100. She's going to need you to have put down the shoes, put down the lashes, and prioritize putting away some money for the future. I talked to an amazing woman last night. She's taking care of her husband. He's 77 years old now. And she talked about having long-term care insurance. She talked about them staying in their 3,000 square foot house. Y'all, I wanted to cry just listening to how well she had prepared, how well he had prepared, how well they as a couple had made the choices in life that were more difficult than yours. They didn't buy new clothes for every holiday. They took trips, but they didn't splurge when they couldn't afford it. And it made their golden years together so much better. And now that he's sick, guess what, y'all? She's able to quit her job and take care of him. But it was from years of making good choices. It was from years of making the hard, tough decisions. I promise you, the older version of you will appreciate if you get some financial maturity today. That leads into building that generational wealth. She was able to buy a house because she didn't buy 2 fancy cars back to back. Right? And I'm not hating on fancy cars, y'all, because as y'all know, I'm definitely a fan. It is the decision. Like, and she mentioned this last night, your red bottoms are going to get old. But that rental property, as it gets old, it will increase in value. And so I remember telling a friend of mine, she was like, oh, you're going to feel funny going from that BMW to that Chevy. And I was like, I'm really not. I would be proud to not pay that maintenance because I had a lot of maintenance costs. So what the car notes, the maintenance. In my opinion, was a deterrent because I felt like I'm not buying a rental property right now with this money. The rental property should be paying this, not me avoiding buying the rental property to pay this. That's a whole different place because the car was never going to make me. It's a liability. Fancy clothes, fancy shoes will never make Tyra any money. It's only the assets that we purchase. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about generational wealth. Number one, when you look back at the 1930s, 40s, 50s, Black people had greater wealth in terms of our actual wealth. So no, we may not have been living in white neighborhoods or shopping at white shops, but we were not as poor as we are today. Why? Because we owned things. We owned the stores. We owned some property. Yeah, it was a difficult time for us, but in terms of our household wealth, we were not as poor. Right now, we may have larger incomes, but we have lower wealth. We don't own anything. Let me tell you why that's a problem. Even if you own your home, you're not owning something that is making you money, then you own a bunch of liabilities. That's a hard pill to swallow. It's a hard pill to swallow. When you look at police brutality, not being able to contribute to defense funds, wanting to make sure that people who have lost, you know, in my case, one thought that I've always had is a lot of people who have lost their parents due to police killings, I would love to have a scholarship fund. Those are the reasons why you want to have wealth. Those are the reasons why you want to leave something to the next generation, so that they're not starting off from scratch, so that they don't have it as hard, so that they have a leg up, so that the family is not working its whole life only to lose assets when you die. So let me tell you a couple keys to generational wealth. Number one, prioritize when you invest. Prioritize buying assets over liabilities. Number two, get your paperwork out. And it's so cheap. You know, when I look at the grand scheme of things, the amount of money that I've spent now, I bought my will. I paid for my will one time. And that's it. You can go with amazing groups like Legal Shield, which I've had for years now. Legal Shield, where you pay a fee every month, $29. You get your will updated, you get power of attorney, you get DMV benefits, you get somebody to come and be at your hearings if you're ever sued, you get contract reviews. You can always use an amazing service like Legal Shield, or you can go to an attorney, you can draw up what you want in your will, you can go to an attorney and have that drawn. But I promise you, it is not an option anymore for you to live without a will after this point. Now that I've told you that that's what you need. Let me tell you, it's going to protect your property so that your kids won't have to go through fighting and figuring out succession. But it'll also protect your kids if they're under 18. Because if you pass away, you don't want the courts to decide where your baby's going. So having that will is key. Having a durable medical power of attorney, giving somebody else power of attorney in the event that you are incapacitated or somebody needs to make this. If there's an investment that you need to make in your life, I want you to have that top 100 list of things that you're going to invest in for you. Now, I pick my things that I splurge on. You know, for example, I love really nice bed sheets. I love wearing nice fabrics. I think the turtleneck I have on is probably like $39 or something like that. So I love really nice fabrics and things like that. I'm okay with that. As y'all can tell, I love books. Right? Buy your books, buy your fabrics. Pick a couple things that help to keep you sane that you know that you're going to invest in. Other than that, every other piece of money I want flowing through your hand, I want it to have purpose. And choosing you is about choosing things like having an IRA, having a retirement account, that's an individual retirement account, having an emergency fund. Even if you just put $1 every 2 weeks in that thing, if you get in the habit of saving over time, you'll start to see that money grow. It gets exciting and you want to save. That choosing you is key and important. And when you start on the path of choosing you and valuing yourself the way that you value, the way that you value others, it becomes easier and easier to say no. Guess what? When people call me and they say, Tyra, I need my rent paid, if I can't raise the money through my nonprofit, if I don't just have an abundance of extra money, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Because guess what? Now all of my money has an reason why my book is called Honor Your Journey and Live with Intention. Because so what, my past isn't what I wanted it to be. That's okay. I made a lot of mistakes. That doesn't matter. I can live with intention today forward. That is key. Lastly, second to last, auto draft your savings. That is the lifesaver. If you just set up auto, and I don't care if it's $25 a month, y'all. You can start putting money in the IRA, $25 a month. If you have any questions about that, you give me a call. And I'm licensed. I can help you. If you want to put away some money, auto draft that you can't touch, but you can call too much. And lastly, get a side hustle. There is nothing like having something to fall back on should something happen to your job. But secondly, you can assign the money for your side hustle to go to a certain account. So you can say, all the money that I'm making off making these hair bows is going to go in my retirement. All the money that I'm making off consulting on the side is going to go into my buy another house to rent out fund or Airbnb fund. Right? Name your dream. Name one of the priorities that you're going to take to invest in yourself from that list we made earlier. Write that down, and all the money you make from your side hustle, put it into that. But I don't want you to live a life where all you're worrying about is debt and accumulating debt. That won't help with generational wealth. That will not help uplift our Black people. And women, you know, we're the ones to get it done. So if there's anybody who can stand up and take on the cause of helping us to be more financially mature, more financially stable, and more financially free. So I've enjoyed speaking to you. If you guys ever need me, definitely hit me up on social media. I am the Purpose-Filled Woman, Tyra L Banks.
Okay, so that was the financial piece. Anybody there? Oh, here we are. Okay. So I like that she said that, you know, you need to put intention on your money. Every bit has to be assigned. I like that. And I wrote that down because that is the truth. Like, I need that in my life.
Is there a way for you to send us the clip? Because I know I lost sound on my end through certain parts, and the sound was
I'll send it to you. I don't know what happened. It was playing and then it lost sound and then it was very low. So I don't know any part to do with it or what. But yeah, I will send that out to you guys.
Yeah, I thought it was very informative.
I wish you were here.
Yeah.
But so that was Tyra L Banks. Her email is Tyra, Tyra, at metromorphosis.net. And I'll put that in the chat. Is there anything else we need to touch on? We have closing remarks.
Just thank you for this panel. It was very informative, and I think more conversations like this are definitely needed.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Definitely want to, I guess, agree with my twin there. Conversations like these are very much needed, and the more courageous conversations we can have within our community and follow up with action, I believe we can definitely be able to see some change. So.
Yep.
Well, I want to thank you all for joining me, and thank Dr. Crutchfield, who had to leave early. I plan on doing this quarterly, so we're going to have to get together, team, and figure out some dates for this for January, and then further on out into 2021, because like you said, 2020 has been a long 5 years. But anyway, so I want to thank you both for taking the time out to converse with me on these things, and I will be in touch. We will all be in touch because we are a squad now. and and we will be back in January.
All right. See you then.
Awesome. Y'all stay safe.
You
You
too.
too.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.